A cop finds an elderly man for speeding, but when he checks the papers, something happens that changes everything. The cop turns pale and suddenly calls his captain. What could be so shocking in those papers? Stay tuned to find out what happens. Next, before we continue, comment below and let us know where you're watching from. It was just another quiet afternoon in the small town. Officer Davis, a cop in his early 30s, had pulled over many drivers before, but something felt different about this stop. The elderly man behind the wheel, Mr. Thompson, was a regular in the neighborhood. Always kind, never causing trouble. Just the kind of guy who took his time driving and lived a simple, quiet life. Officer Davis was about to issue a ticket for a minor speeding violation when he glanced at Mr. Thompson's papers. As soon as he saw them, something didn't sit right. His heart skipped a beat, and his fingers went cold. Mr. Thompson's driver's license and registration didn't match up with what they were supposed to be. Suddenly, this stop wasn't so routine anymore. Officer Davis looked up at the old man, his face pale. What was going on? Officer Davis had handled traffic stops countless times, but something about this one felt different. He had pulled over Mr. Thompson, an elderly man from the neighborhood, for a minor speeding violation. Mr. Thompson was a quiet, well-known figure, always polite and never causing any trouble. But when Officer Davis checked his papers, his driver's license, registration, and insurance, he felt his stomach drop. At first, Davis assumed it was just a mistake. The documents didn't look fake, but something about them felt wrong. He checked them again, and then once more. His heart began to race. What was wrong with these papers? Why did they feel off? "Everything okay, officer?" Mr. Thompson asked, his voice calm, almost too calm. The elderly man was watching Davis, sensing something was wrong, but he had no idea what was happening. Davis forced a smile, trying to keep it together. "Just a moment, sir," he said before walking back to his patrol car. He quickly ran the information through the system, but nothing came back that made sense. His hands were shaking now. How could something so simple turn into something so complicated? Davis sat in the patrol car trying to collect his thoughts. He had been a cop long enough to recognize when something wasn't right, and this was one of those moments. He didn't know what was going on, but he needed help. "I need backup," he radioed. "Call the captain." The radio crackled, and within minutes, the captain was on his way. As Davis waited, the unease only grew. What had seemed like a routine traffic stop had turned into something far more serious. When Captain Roberts arrived, his usual confidence was replaced with a focused urgency. He immediately took the papers from Davis, scanning them closely. Davis could feel his stomach tightening. What was going on? The captain didn't speak at first, just continuing to look at the documents. Davis felt like every second was dragging on, each one more tense than the last. Then, finally, Roberts looked up, his face pale. "This isn't just a routine traffic stop, is it?" Davis shook his head. "No, sir. These papers, they don't match up, but they're valid. I've never seen anything like it." Captain Roberts' expression grew more serious. He walked over to Mr. Thompson's car and spoke to him quietly. For a moment, Davis couldn't hear what they were saying, but he could see Mr. Thompson growing increasingly confused. After a few minutes, Roberts returned. "There's been a mistake. These papers, they're not yours, Mr. Thompson." Mr. Thompson looked stunned. "What are you talking about? I've had these papers for years. There's no mistake." But the captain wasn't convinced. "These documents are part of a case we've been working on. We've been tracking someone using false identification. Your name, your license. This has all been tied to another person, someone with a criminal record." Davis was speechless. How could this be? Mr. Thompson was just a simple man who lived in the neighborhood. How could his documents be linked to a criminal? The elderly man's face paled. "This doesn't make sense. I've never done anything wrong in my life. How could my papers be tied to a criminal? Captain Roberts nodded grimly. It's a case of identity theft. Someone has been using your identity for years without you knowing. We've been investigating for months, but now we have to follow up. This is serious. Davis stood still, shocked by the revelation. He had never imagined that something as simple as a traffic stop would uncover such a huge mistake. What happens now? Davis asked, his voice tight. We'll need to bring you in, Mr. Thompson, Captain Roberts said. We'll clear everything up, but we need to follow procedure. Mr. Thompson didn't respond. His world was spinning, and he couldn't process everything. The simple life he had led, the papers he had trusted for so many years, were now part of a crime investigation. The captain called for a team to take Mr. Thompson down to the station for further questioning, but Davis couldn't help but feel sympathy for the elderly man. This wasn't how things were supposed to go. It was supposed to be just a traffic stop. Davis turned to look at the man one last time. This was a day neither of them would ever forget. And as the truth started to unfold, it would change both of their lives in ways they never could have imagined. The situation had gone from a simple traffic stop to something much more complicated, and Officer Davis was starting to feel the weight of it. He had called Captain Roberts because the papers didn't add up, but what was coming next was far beyond anything he expected. As the captain approached, Officer Davis stepped aside, his heart racing. The elderly man in the car, Mr. Thompson, looked more confused by the minute. "What's going on, officer?" Mr. Thompson asked again, his voice trembling now. "Is there a problem with my papers?" Captain Roberts didn't answer right away. He stood beside Davis, scanning the documents. One last time. Davis watched his captain's face, which had gone from neutral to deeply serious in the span of just a few minutes. The calm in the air had completely shifted. This wasn't just about a traffic violation anymore. This was something bigger. "Mr. Thompson," Roberts began, his voice low but firm, "I need to be honest with you. These papers don't belong to you." The words hit Davis like a cold punch. He had suspected something was wrong, but hearing it out loud made everything seem so much worse. The identity Mr. Thompson had been carrying all these years wasn't his at all. The captain's voice grew more intense as he spoke. "We've been investigating a case of stolen identity, and it seems that your details, your name, your driver's license, have been used by someone else, someone involved in a serious crime." Mr. Thompson's face went pale. "What do you mean? How can this be?" He looked at Davis, his eyes wide with panic. "I've never done anything wrong. I've been driving for years without trouble." "I understand, sir," Davis replied, trying to remain calm. He could feel the tension building, the weight of the situation pressing down on him as well. This wasn't the man's fault. But it was his identity that had been stolen, and now they were involved in something much bigger than a speeding ticket. The captain continued. "We believe someone has been using your identity for years, Mr. Thompson. They've been hiding, in plain sight, using your details to commit crimes, and we didn't even know you were connected to it until now." The words hung in the air. Mr. Thompson sat in stunned silence, still trying to wrap his head around the fact that his life, his simple, quiet life, was part of something criminal. He had never been involved in anything like this, and now everything was spiraling out of control. "How could this happen?" Mr. Thompson whispered. "I've lived here all my life. I've done nothing wrong." Roberts gave a sympathetic glance before responding. "I know it's hard to believe, but identity theft happens more often than you think. People like you, who live quiet, unassuming lives, are often targeted by criminals who know they won't be checked closely." Davis stepped forward, trying to ease the elderly man's panic. "We're going to fix this, Mr. Thompson. We'll help clear your name. This was never your fault." But that didn't make the situation any less terrifying. If someone had been using his identity for all this time, what else had they done? And how long had this been going on without anyone noticing? The captain looked back at Davis. We need to get him down to the station. We need to run a full investigation, and we'll need to confirm all the details. But we'll clear your name, Mr. Thompson. You're not in trouble. But we need to make sure the criminal behind this is caught." Davis nodded, his hands still, slightly shaking from the gravity of the situation. He had never expected a routine traffic stop to lead to something so serious. But now, Mr. Thompson wasn't just a simple old man from the neighborhood. He was at the center of an investigation that could take months to resolve. The officers helped Mr. Thompson out of the car, but he looked lost, unsure of what was happening. It was like his entire world had been turned upside down. He had trusted the papers he'd carried for decades, never imagining they weren't even his own. "I don't know how to feel," Mr. Thompson said quietly, still in disbelief. "My whole life, all these years, they weren't even my own." "I understand," Captain Roberts said, placing a hand on his shoulder. "But you've done nothing wrong, and we're going to make sure this gets straightened out." As they led Mr. Thompson toward the patrol car, Davis couldn't help but wonder how many more people had been affected by this kind of fraud. It had been such a simple mistake, but it had unraveled a much bigger problem. This wasn't just about one man's identity. It was about the cracks in the system that criminals were able to exploit. The investigation was just beginning, and for Mr. Thompson, his quiet life had just been turned upside down in the most unexpected way. The air was heavy with tension as Captain Roberts and Officer Davis stood beside Mr. Thompson, who was still trying to make sense of what was happening. The revelation about the stolen identity had shaken the elderly man to his core. He was quiet now, the weight of the situation sinking in. Davis felt for him, but there was no time to dwell on it. They had a crime to solve. "Mr. Thompson," Captain Roberts said, his tone softer now, "we need you to come with us. There's more we need to uncover, but we're going to make sure you're cleared of any wrongdoing." Mr. Thompson nodded slowly, his eyes still wide in disbelief. "I don't understand. How could this happen? How could my life, my name, be used by someone else?" "Believe me," Roberts said, "we're just as shocked as you are. But the papers we've seen connect you to something much bigger. Someone used your identity to commit serious crimes, and we've been tracking it for months. You were never the target, but you're now part of an investigation that could have been going on for years." Davis could see the confusion in Mr. Thompson's eyes. He wasn't a criminal, just a man living his life in a quiet neighborhood. The last thing he'd ever expected was to be caught up in a criminal investigation. "But I've done nothing wrong," Mr. Thompson said. "I've been an honest man my whole life." "We know," Roberts reassured him, "and we'll get to the bottom of this. But right now, we need to go to the station and get to the truth. Your identity's been compromised, but that doesn't mean you've committed a crime. We're going to clear you of any connection to this." The captain's words seemed to calm Mr. Thompson slightly, but he still looked lost. He followed them to the patrol car without saying much, his mind clearly overwhelmed by the sudden turn of events. As they drove to the station, Davis couldn't shake the weight of the situation. This was more than just a case of stolen identity. The criminal behind this was still out there, using Mr. Thompson's details to evade capture. The thought kept nagging at him. Who was this person, and why had they chosen Mr. Thompson? When they arrived at the station, the investigation kicked into high gear. Officers began running more checks on Mr. Thompson's documents, trying to piece together exactly how his identity had been stolen and what the criminal had been doing with it. They knew it wouldn't be easy, but they were determined to find answers. Davis watched as the paperwork was processed. The more he learned about the case, the stranger it became. The criminal wasn't just using Mr. Thompson's identity for small-time activities. They were involved in serious fraud, bank accounts, and even several high-profile heists. The connection to Mr. Thompson wasn't just a mistake. It was part of a larger scheme. After what felt like hours, Captain Roberts walked into the room, his face more serious than ever. "Davis," he said, "I've got something. This isn't just an identity theft case. We've got a match." Davis's heart skipped a beat. "A match? What did that mean? He stood up, walking over to Roberts. A match to what? The captain handed him a file. Inside was a photograph of a man in his mid-40s with a criminal record longer than Davis had ever seen. The name on the file matched the details of Mr. Thompson's stolen identity. But here's the twist. This man had been arrested years ago. So, how was he still using Mr. Thompson's identity? Roberts turned to Davis, his expression grim. This criminal. He's been using multiple identities to stay under the radar. He's been linked to some high-profile cases, but we've never been able to catch him until now. And we've just discovered that the man we've been tracking, the one using Mr. Thompson's identity, was hiding right under our noses. Davis was stunned. You mean the criminal has been living in this town all along? That's right, Roberts said. And now we've got the break we needed. We're going to catch him. The investigation wasn't over yet, but for the first time in days, Davis felt a sense of clarity. The pieces were coming together. The man who had stolen Mr. Thompson's identity was part of something much larger than they could have imagined. The twist was a game changer. It wasn't just about one stolen identity. It was about an elaborate network that had been operating right under their noses. Mr. Thompson sat in a small room, still trying to grasp the full scope of what was happening. But now there was hope. The police had their lead, and they were, finally on the trail of the criminal who had used his life as a cover. This was just the beginning, but for Mr. Thompson, the storm had passed. The real battle, however, was only starting. The truth was finally starting to unfold. Mr. Thompson, still sitting in the small interrogation room, couldn't believe the weight of everything that had just happened. His entire life, the quiet existence he had lived for decades, was now tangled in a complex criminal investigation. Identity theft wasn't something he had ever thought would affect him. He had always trusted his documents, his name, his routine. But now everything was in question. Captain Roberts had assured him that the situation would be cleared up soon. The criminal who had stolen his identity was under investigation, and all the paperwork was being processed. Yet, despite all the assurances, Mr. Thompson couldn't shake the feeling that his world had changed forever. The life he knew, where his biggest worry had been the occasional speeding ticket, was no longer his reality. As Mr. Thompson sat there, trying to make sense of it all, Davis came in. He looked less tense now, more focused. "We've got a lead on the guy using your identity. We're going to track him down," Davis said, trying to give him some good news. Mr. Thompson looked at him, the confusion still clouding his face. "But why me? Why my name? I've lived here my whole life. I've never hurt anyone." Davis nodded, understanding the pain in the elderly man's voice. "I know, sir. But sometimes these criminals target people who don't stand out. They figure they won't be questioned, and they can hide behind the facade of a simple life. The truth is, no one would ever expect this to happen to you." The words hit Mr. Thompson hard. He had never thought of himself as someone who could be exploited. He was just a quiet old man who went about his business. But now, in the midst of an investigation, he saw that his life had been used as a cover for something far darker. Captain Roberts entered the room, his tone more relaxed than before. "We've got the full story now. The man using your identity has been on our radar for a while. We've been tracking his movements, but it looks like he slipped through the cracks until now." Davis continued, "The good news is, we know who he is. The bad news is, we still have a lot of work ahead of us to bring him to justice. But rest assured, Mr. Thompson, you've done nothing wrong. This wasn't your fault." For a moment, Mr. Thompson just sat there, processing everything that had been said. He thought about his life, his simple, quiet life, and how it had been completely upended by someone he didn't even know. He had been just another victim in a system that was often blind to the quiet lives of people like him. "I never imagined anything like this," Mr. Thompson said softly. "All I wanted was to stay out of trouble, to live quietly. I didn't ask for any of this." Captain Roberts looked at him sympathetically. "I know, Mr. Thompson, but sometimes life doesn't give us what we expect. The important thing is that you stayed calm. You didn't panic. You trusted us to help you. And we will." Davis nodded in agreement. "And this will pass. We'll get your name cleared, and you can go back to living your life the way you always have. But now, you know something important. Sometimes it's the quiet ones who get targeted, but you're stronger than you realize." Mr. Thompson wasn't sure about being stronger, but he knew one thing for sure. He would never again take his identity or his life for granted. He had learned a painful lesson, but one that he could use moving forward. As the investigation continued, Mr. Thompson felt a renewed sense of strength. What had started as a confusing, terrifying event had turned into a turning point for him. The lesson was clear. Sometimes life throws unexpected challenges your way, but how you handle them makes all the difference. The investigation eventually led to the criminal who had stolen Mr. Thompson's identity. He was caught, and justice was served. Mr. Thompson's name was cleared, and he was finally able to return to his quiet life. But now, every time he looked at his papers, he understood their value in a new way. He had learned to appreciate the things that mattered most, and most importantly, to never take his identity for granted again. In the end, the experience left Mr. Thompson wiser, and while he would never forget the ordeal, he was stronger for having lived through it. Mr. Thompson's life had turned upside down in just a matter of days, but as the dust settled, something became clear. He had survived an ordeal that most people never expect to face. The identity theft that had rocked his world was now behind him, and the criminal who had used his name for years was caught. But it wasn't just about the resolution. It was about what Mr. Thompson had learned through the process. Sometimes, life takes you down a path you never saw coming, and the way you handle it can change everything. His quiet life had been invaded by a criminal, but he didn't let fear control him. He fought back, not with anger, but with patience and trust in the system. And that made all the difference. Now, it's your turn. Have you ever faced something unexpected that turned your world upside down? How did you handle it? What did you learn from the experience? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your stories and how you've dealt with the challenges life has thrown your way. If you enjoyed Mr. Thompson's story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. We've got more incredible stories coming your way that will inspire and keep you thinking about the unexpected moments that shape our lives. Thanks for watching, and remember, life can change in an instant, but how you respond can define your future.